Good morning, fifth graders. Ms. Jagodnik here with our final lesson in chapter 14. This is lesson 14-4. We're going to be going over the problems on 797. This topic is all about coordinate grids, and this particular lesson tells you how you can use a coordinate grid as a strategy to solve a problem. If you have a problem where we're talking about locations and things are going in a pattern, a coordinate grid can be a good strategy, but certainly not the only one. So I'm going to demonstrate with these problems how we can think through it and use a coordinate grid to help us, but also how we can use a chart like you've seen in some of the problems over the last couple lessons. It ends up looking like a ratio table, and you can use that as well. So on page 797, we're going to go over this first problem, the guided practice. Tanya planted a rose bush at 3-1. So I see right away they're using coordinate grid here. She moved 2 feet east and 1 foot north to plant the second bush. And she continued this pattern 2 feet east and 1 foot north. So they've asked me, first of all, how can the grid help? So the grid can certainly help here because I have a coordinate 3-1. And they're telling me how far over she moved and how far up she moved. So it's like moving over on the x-axis and moving up on the y-axis. So I can figure out my next points from that. Because I know this is a pattern, because she's doing the same thing each time, I can then plot all the points and end up with a line that shows me what's going to happen in the future. And I can use that to predict what the future points would be. So number 2 asked me specifically to label the first 4 bushes and are they in a straight line. So the first one they gave to me is 3-1. So we know we always go over on the x-axis first and then up on the y-axis. So this 3 is the x-axis going sideways and the 1 is the y-axis going up. Even though for this problem it's a real world problem, so they call them east because that's the direction that would be. And north because that's the direction that would be on a map. So what I notice is a little different about these grids in this topic is that all the numbers aren't labeled. When I look at the x and the y-axis, they're not counting by 1, they're skip counting by 2. But there are lines in between to represent the odd numbers that aren't labeled. So if it makes you feel better, you can always go through and label the odd numbers so you can see all the numbers at once if that's easier for you. Or you can just recognize if I have an odd number, I'm going to have to put it in between the 2 even ones that it's closest to. So when I have 3-1, there's no 3 on my x-axis. I can label it if I want to, or I can just go, well, there's 2 and there's 4. The line in between must be 3. Same thing over here. Here's 0 and 2. I want to go to 1. This line must be 1. So here is my first rose bush at 3-1. Now the problem tells me that for the other ones, she's going to move 2 feet east. So again, that's on the x-axis, and 1 foot north. That is on the y-axis. So I'm going to start at this point, and I'm going to go over 2 spaces. 1, 2. And then I'm going to go up 1, 1. So my next point should be right here. Does that make sense? If I look at my x-axis, that would be 5. Oh, so yes, from 3 to 5, I've gone over 2. If I look at the y-axis, I'm now on 2. So that also makes sense. I'm following the directions. I went up from 1 to 2 on the y-axis. Now to get my third and fourth bushes, I can just continue this pattern. I'm going to go over 2 on the x-axis and up 1 on the y. So that would be between the 6 and the 8 would be a 7. And then between the 2 and the 4 would be a 3. I'm at 7, 3. Once again, I'm going to go over 2 and up 1. Okay. That would be between the 8 and the 10. So I'm on 9. And this is on 4 exactly. So there are my first 4 rose bushes. 3-1, 5-2, 7-3, 9-4. The second part of the question asks me, are they in a straight line? Can I connect them? Yep, I do not have to go up and down or zigzag in any way. They connect perfectly. So yes, they are. And I know that that means, based on my lesson from yesterday, that means they're in a pattern. So I know I'm following a pattern And that's why they go in a straight line. They're not going up and down. They're going the same amount sideways and the same amount up each time, which makes a nice diagonal line on my grid. Now, this question asks me, what are the positions of the 5th and 9th rose bushes? So far I've done number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4. They want to know 5th. What would the next one be? Well, that's not too hard. I could just follow my pattern and go over 2 and up 1 again. But they also want to know, what would the 9th one be? So I'd have to do 5, then 6, then 7. I am strongly suspicious that at that point I would be off my grid. So I think now I want to think of what's a more efficient way I could solve this problem instead of having to extend the grid or find a bigger piece of graph paper. I could think about using a chart or a table of some kind to keep track of the pattern, because this is really a pattern problem. Yes, I can use the grid, but it's not my only strategy. I can use any strategy I could use to figure out a pattern. And the ratio table or a T-chart of some kind works just as well as I figure out this 2-part pattern. So if I think about, here's the bush, okay? And I know that I want to figure out all the way up to 9 bushes, because that's what the problem asks me about. And I want to know what is the X number and what is the Y number. The x-axis and the y-axis. So I know the first one was 3, 1. I know the second one was 5, 2. I know the third one was 7, 3. I know the fourth one was 9, 4. So now I can look across my table and say, gee, what's happening here? Oh, I see every time I go to the next bush, this is adding 2. And every time I go to the next bush, this is adding 1. That makes perfect sense with my instructions because it told me to go over 2 east and 1 foot north. So over 2 on the X and 1 foot up on the Y. So now I can just continue my pattern. 9 plus 2 more is 11. 4 plus 1 more is 5. So that's where my next bush would be. Over 2, up 1. Yep, I'm between 10 and 12, that's 11. And yep, I'm between 4 and 6, that's 5. So either way I do that, okay, the 5th rose bush is at 11.5. Okay? But now I need to figure out the 9th one, and that's where I'm going to get complicated and run out of space. So I think I'll just keep using the chart. I'm adding 2 more. So the 6th one would be 13 on the x-axis. And adding 1 more, 6 on the y-axis. Same pattern, add 2, add 1, the 7th one would be at 15.7. Same pattern, add 2, add 1, that 8th one would be at 17.8. And finally, here's what I need, add 2 is 19, add 1 is 9. That's the one they asked me about, the 9th one. So I'm going to say that its position is at 19.9. That's its coordinate. Okay, so now we're going to go on to the problem at the bottom of this page, the first one that's labeled independent practice. It is also a problem that's very similar. It uses a pattern, and I can use the coordinate grid to plot the points and follow the pattern, or I could use a chart or some other strategy if I find that easier. So let's take a look at what kinds of answers I'm being asked for and think what might be the most efficient way to get them. Juan started at 2, 2. Every 15 seconds, he moves 4 yards east and 3 yards north. So again, I'm going east, that's X, going sideways, and north is Y, going up. Okay, number 1, or number 4 here, says how can you model it? So again, I could answer that question in my book. I could say I can model it by plotting the points on the coordinate grid and connecting them to show that there's a pattern and it makes a straight line. Okay. Number 5 says label his first 4 positions. So just like the last problem, I got to do the first 4. So the first one they told me is at 2, 2. Here we go. Oh, and I see this grid is doing the same thing that the last one was doing. The odd numbers are not labeled. You can label them yourself, or you can just figure the in-between lines must be the odd ones. 2, 2 was not a problem. Both the 2's were there. And of course, it's one of those easy ones where I don't have to worry about which way I'm going. Okay, the next one, he's going to move 4 yards east and 3 yards north. So 4 yards sideways, I was at 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, I'm going to go to 6. And then 3 yards north, I was at 2. So 1, 2, 3, I'm going to end up here between the 4 and the 6. So I'm going to end up at 6, 5. Okay. Whoa, these are a lot more spread out than the first problem. It's a bigger pattern, I see. Okay, the third one. Okay, I'm going to follow the same pattern. 4 yards east. So I was at 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And 3 yards north, going up. 1, 2, 3, up right at the 8 where I should be. So 10, 8. Yeah, I see the pattern. My sideways, my X is going 2 to 6 to 10. That's plus 4. And as I go up, I'm going from 2 to 5 to 8 on the y-axis. So that's plus 3. So far, so good. I need to plot one more. I need to go over 4 again. 1, 2, 3, 4. Looks like I end up on 14. That makes sense. And then up 3, 1, 2, 3. Looks like I end up between 10 and 12. That's 11. Does that make sense? Yes, 8 plus 3 is 11. Good. So there's my first 4 points. And it asks me if it is a pattern. Is it a pattern? Yes, it absolutely is. How can I tell? First, I can look at the directions. I'm doing the same thing each time. Second, I can look at the coordinates. I can see that each one is plus 4. I can see that each y coordinate is plus 3. And third, I can try what I did last time and connect them. Oh, yep, it's a straight line. That means no zigzags. It's definitely, it would keep going that way because it's a pattern. Okay. So usually when you see these on the grid, they start from the beginning and they keep going. So you might want to practice drawing them that way. That's the pattern. Okay. Last one asked me, what's his location? Just like the other one, now we're predicting forward. After 60 seconds, wait a second, we're talking about time now. Ooh, this one's got a twist to it. Now we're talking about time. What's his location after 60 seconds and after 90 seconds? So now I need to go back and get this information from the problem. That not only is he just moving whenever he wants, he's doing it every 15 seconds in a pattern. So I want to make myself a chart again. Okay. Let's make sure I put it where you can see it here. Okay. Here's his position. Okay. And here's X and Y. And I know his pattern is he's doing plus 4 to the east. So the X is 4 more each time. And plus 3 north, so it's 3 more each time. And I guess we can just label it Juan. Okay, Juan's time, I guess. Okay, this is where he started. This is when he was at 0. Notice they told me he started at 2, 2. That's before he moved it all. Every 15 seconds, okay, so this is after 15 seconds. That's when he was at 6, 5. Then another 15 seconds. So 15 plus 15. Now I would be at 30 seconds. Okay. That's when he got to 10, 8. So here's where he started. 15 seconds later, he did the plus 4 plus 3 and got here. Another 15 seconds later. So 30 seconds, he did the plus 4 and plus 3 and got here. Another 15 seconds would be 45 seconds. Okay. So now my last point is 14:11. He did the plus 4 and plus 3. So the next 15 seconds, I need to extend my chart now. The next 15 seconds is the 60 seconds I'm looking for, because 45 plus 15 is 60. So this has a pattern too. I'm adding 15 seconds each time. I'm adding 4 yards east and 3 yards north each time. So if I follow my pattern, I'm not on the grid anymore. I'm going to add 4 more to 14. 14 plus 4 is 18. And then I'm going to add 3 more to 11. So 11 plus 3 is 14. So his location after 60 seconds would be 18 on the x-axis, 14 on the y-axis. So there's my ordered pair, 18, 14. Okay. Now, it also asked me about 90 seconds. I'm not there yet, so I need another 15 seconds. Let me just tilt you so you can see the edge there. Is 75, because 60 plus 15 is 75. Okay, I'm going to add 4 to my x following the pattern, and 3 to my y following the pattern, and I see I end up at 22, 17, but they didn't ask me about that. Another 15 seconds is 90. That's what they asked me about. Okay. So I'm going to follow my pattern one more time. 22 plus 4 is 26. 17 plus 3 is 20. Okay. So my final answer is the coordinate for 90 seconds. He would be at 26, 20. So now we've answered all the questions. So as you go on through the rest of your independent work and through your practice buddy, keep that in mind. Sometimes it might be easier to plot the points on the grid and notice the pattern and follow it along that way. Sometimes, especially if you're getting to prediction questions that are far in the future and your grid isn't big enough, it might be a lot easier just to sketch yourself a quick chart and you can follow the pattern like you can for any other pattern question. Okay, I hope that helps. You're going to go on and finish page 798 in your book, and then, of course, your practice buddy online. Hope you enjoy the lesson and have a lovely weekend.